last year this body passed, it was ordinance number 2022-09. That was the ordinance establishing the EMS local option income tax at a 0.2% rate, and that rate was to support Director Deckard's EMS department. We found out several months ago that due to a technicality in the submission that we'll correct here momentarily, that ordinance did not go into force at the state level. So we passed everything as we were required to do, but we had an error in the document, and so it did not go into force, and we did not start collecting that money this year as we expected. Now that's problematic because Stephen needs to be able to run those ambulances for 12 months, not 6. And so we found ourselves with an issue of how we were going to come up with that funding, how we were going to cover the gap for that funding shortfall. The plan A was that the Department of Local Government Finance, and I want to pause here to thank Commissioner Wes Bennett, the state commissioner for the Department of Local Government Finance. He's been very helpful as he's worked with us through this issue. But clearly their hands were tied by statutory restrictions. They could only do what the law allowed them to do. So our first effort was to try to work with Senator Brian Buchanan to literally change the law, to see if we could come up with a solution that would allow the Department of Local Government Finance to begin distributing our money in July, and it would have allowed us to finish the end of the year. That clause was introduced into legislation. It went to the 11th hour of the last day, and eventually was pulled out. So we were not successful in trying to fix that problem legislatively. But knowing that was a possibility, we had Plan B in the works. Plan B is that we were introduced to the folks at the Indiana Bond Bank, which operates through the state treasurer's office. And the $1.5 million that we anticipated getting through the local income tax, we're going to borrow from the Indiana Bond Bank and then pay back over the next 4 years. So that is what we're doing here today. That gets Stephen the money he needs to finish operating this year. It has a minimal impact on the taxpayers of the county because we do get to spread that over 4 years. We got a very favorable interest rate of 3.3%, and it's what we need to do to keep this department functioning and keeping that critical public safety department in service. So that's what we have here. We have ordinance number 2023-09. It's a bond and appropriation ordinance approving the issuance. We advertised $1.7 million. It's not actually that much. It's $1.59 million in general obligation bonds, and those are to support the operations of the EMS department. The error that I referenced, we also need to take another, and it's down the list here, we'll get to it in a moment, but the error was that in our ordinance last year, there's a chart, and that chart lists all of the county income taxes that are enforced before and after the action taken by the council. And we had an error in one of the numbers on that chart. And so we did not advertise an accurate chart. And so what we need to do today is we're going to do a resolution of the county council to correct errors in ordinance 2022-09. We're going to change that one number that caused all this problem, that we showed a number at 0.5 that's supposed to be at 0. So we'll correct that error, and we should be ready to move forward, and everything will go into place as we anticipated beginning in January of 2024. So we have those two action items we need to take. The first of which is the ordinance number 2023-09, the bond and appropriation ordinance approving the issuance of $1.59 million in Clinton County general obligation bonds. I'm open to any questions or needs. The council was aware of this prior to the meeting, but I wanted to be very clear and transparent with the public as to why we're doing this and why it's coming up now. I guess the one point I do want to be clear on is that the application now goes to the Indiana Bond Bank for their board approval. They meet tomorrow. And so that's why we needed to do this today in sort of a expedited fashion to meet that deadline. The monies then would go through the bond issuance process, and we would have those monies, if not by the end of May, definitely by the end of June, which was our deadline of when we needed to have that funding in place for the second half of the year. Anybody have any other questions? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2023-09, the bond and appropriation ordinance.
Okay, I have a motion by Clark to approve that ordinance, second by Mike. Any last opportunity for questions or comment? Okay, seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. That motion carries. Mike, your hand was up? Yep, 6-0. Okay, I wanted to make sure. Now, the next item does, I guess we do need to have, Zach, correct me, we need to have a hearing, or do I need to open a hearing on the appropriation of those bond proceeds once received? Is that?
Yep, I have one item, though, just for nothing to sign, but would appreciate a motion. And this was a request by the bond bank. They would like, and I think was distributed in your packet, the bond bank is anticipated to purchase this bond, and they do have a form of purchase agreement that they require qualified entities, which Clinton County, under this financing structure, is deemed a qualified entity. It's a qualified entity purchase agreement. Again, it's the form of agreement that the bond bank requires. There's not really negotiation. It's simply filling in the blanks in terms of the bond amount.
Kind of our application.
It's it's the document that says, yes, we will buy this so long as these things happen. So the bond bank did request that we make sure that this was on the agenda and that there was a motion to approve the form of purchase agreement. This form will then be finalized once the bond terms are more definitive, and would be a closing deliverable, or perhaps executed a bit before closing.
My apologies, Zach, you did send that to everybody, and I just failed to
Oh,
get
no,
it
no,
on
no,
the
no
agenda.
problem. I just want to make sure it's on the record and that we cover it.
So, would you read that for our benefit again on what the title of what you need approved
Yes.
is?
We need council's approval of the Indiana Bond Bank's form of qualified entity purchase agreement.
Okay. Form of entity qualified purchase agreement. I need a motion to approve that. And you all had that in your packet. I don't want to, we're not trying to add a document at the last minute here. I failed to get that on the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so a motion by Carol to approve that bond bank document, a second by Jeff. All those in favor, raise your right hand. That motion carries 6-0. Now, the hearing, make sure I don't screw the hearing up
Yep,
here.
this is, so you guys are going to be receiving bond proceeds from the bond bank when they purchase the bonds. We just need to go through the normal appropriation process and have a hearing appropriating those funds, just as you would any other appropriation, additional appropriation. So this is an additional appropriation hearing. This was noticed for hearing on April 26th.
Okay, so normally this would appear on our additional appropriation ordinance, but given the unique nature of this appropriation, it's listed as an individual item for consideration on its own. So at this point, I'll open the floor to the hearing process and let anybody that'd like to speak to this appropriation, you have the floor or the opportunity. Anybody care to speak? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we'll close that brief public hearing. And that brings us to the final item, and that is Resolution 2023-02, a resolution of the County Council to correct errors in Ordinance 2022-09. That resolution essentially reaffirms all of the language involved in last year's ordinance number 2022-09, but makes the correction to that chart to remove the tax that was overstated. Do I have a motion to approve that resolution?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Clark. Do I have a second?
Second.
I think I've got a second by Todd. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0. Zach or Emma, anything else that, I don't want to miss any other technicalities here, so, okay. Thank you for your work on this and your partnership. We had a lot of meetings with state officials, and I again want to commend the state for their empathy and cooperation with us as we tried to figure out the most effective way to deal with the situation, so. Okay. Now to our regular, more mundane issue of our additional appropriations for the month of May. We do have several this month, so bear with me while I get to the right spot. Okay, beginning with the general fund. We had $593.77 left in the EMA training facility fund that we established, I don't know if that was last year or the year prior, for the facility out at the, across from the fairgrounds or next door to the fairgrounds. So we're reappropriating the remaining balance so that that can be used in 2023, $593.77. And then also, the second item is the $10,000 that we pledged last month for Chris Overman with the replacement of the water heater that Chris updated us on last week. So this is the official appropriation for that. In the accident report fund, $515 is used for equipment to buy some new stop sticks. Community corrections requests $1,508. This is to augment the request that was made last month for the salary bonuses, that upon further calculation, they determined that they'd made a math error and they needed a little bit extra money. So that's the $1,508 for corrections. The Drug and Alcohol Coalition each year gets an appropriation. We do this one time from their grant proceeds, and we put the money into to a few line items for their use. We have $10,000 for the drug prevention line item, $10,000 for the criminal justice line item, and $10,000 for the treatment line item for the Drug and Alcohol Coalition. I'm sorry, we also have $27,000, which is the portion of the state opioid settlement that we discussed earlier this year. And you'll recall we had a division of those county monies. $27,000 of that went to the Drug and Alcohol Coalition, and so we're appropriating that for their use as well. From the Firearms Training Fund, $5,290 for weapons purchases to restock our supply. Health Department, $2,000 for extra help and $200 to cover the Social Security and Medicare on that extra help. We also have $2,500 to cover the annual fetal and infant mortality review fee. Local road and street, a couple of equipment items here. One, we had previously approved in the budget the purchase of a new patch truck, but inflation being what it is, the actual purchase price came in a little higher than what we budgeted, so we need to augment that original appropriation with an additional $5,000 to finish the purchase of the patch truck. And then also, and Rick, I will give you the floor here to speak real briefly, as you shared with me, we have $7,000 for the drum roller. And this is actually an additional drum roller to what we talked about earlier, which was what was confusing to me, and I wanted Rick to share with you all as well.
You gave us money to buy a new little roller, which is 48 inch. We also have a big roller that's 10 tons, and it broke down. We couldn't get parts for it, so Central Paving had another one that they was loaning to counties as they needed it, and we bought that one off of them to replace the one that broke down and we couldn't get parts for. So it was originally $7,800, and I think I got it for $7,000.
Right, that's right. So I just wanted to make sure there was no confusion. This is separate from the lease agreement we had talked about for the smaller roller, but this gets us another big roller for a bargain basement price of $7,000. Okay, from the Sex and Violent Offender Administration Fund, $4,500 for some new furniture for the Investigations Department. The TREX program continues to pay big dividends for the county. This is for probation. Without reading all of those off, that totals $9,211.65. These are people that owe the probation department money that we're getting a state tax refund, and we've laid a claim on that tax refund, and it gets redirected to the county fees that they owe prior to their receipt of the income. So the probation received $9,211 that we're appropriating for their use. The probation department also received a portion of the opioid settlement funds, and that was $2,000 that we're appropriating for their use. Last month, we discussed receiving from the state of Indiana $1.5 million for their contribution for the roundabout project that's happening at I-65 and State Road 28. We have that $1.5 million to appropriate into the construction fund now so that Britt can start paying the bills with it. Health Department, travel immunization fund. We provide immunizations to county residents, and the money that they pay, the Health Department gets used to turn around and reinvest in additional vaccines that can be used for future immunizations. So we have $4,000 of income that we receive that we're appropriating back for the use to purchase new vaccine. Community Corrections also received some monies from the TREX program, and I believe that totaled $1,496 in a couple of different receipts. So again, paying dividends. Central Dispatch received a $50 donation in recognition of the, what's the right term?
Telecommunications Week.
That's Telecommunications Week, and was used to help provide a lunch for our dispatchers, and so we appropriate that money out and thank, I believe that was Kevin Castle that, if I remember right, that made that donation, and thank him. Okay, I've skipped one here, I think. That's Community Corrections. My mouth got ahead of my fingers. Probation, here's another, this is an additional, probation has different pots, and so this is a $30,000 share of the opioid grant that goes to probation to the opioid settlement line item. And then lastly, to finish the funding for the roundabout project, you'll recall, and this was all discussed in an earlier meeting, between the remaining bond proceed funds from the road project, the state contribution of $1.5 million, and to finish that bid amount, we needed to put $1 million of our ARPA funds that we discussed at an earlier meeting. This is the official appropriation of that $1 million from the ARPA fund to be used to finish the roundabout project. That concludes the list of additional appropriations. That is, in total, let's see, I was going to reference the appropriation, or the ordinance number. I don't see it on there. 2023-07. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
I have a motion by Jeff.
Second.
Second by Mike to approve the May additional appropriation slate. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0. We do have just a couple of transfers. Again, the things that we've talked about in previous meetings for the most part. You'll recall we had a presentation from Soil and Water last month with a request that we be able to raise the part-time wage. They were going to fund that through funds they had on hand. It didn't require any additional investment by the county, but it did require a transfer that required our approval. So you'll see we have $2,600 from overtime to conservation grant personnel, and we have $1,545 from storage unit rental to conservation grant personnel. And then we also have some money in the Health Department COVID testing grant. We're transferring $4,620 to the use for miscellaneous equipment replacement and repair to be used on LED ballasts and lights. And then we also have some monies on other, and maybe I should let you, Rodney, speak to this because there's a lot of different funds here, but we have $1,100 and $100 that are being transferred to pay for Karina, who does translation for the immunization clinic. It looks like it was for some different grant funds that we're moving around to consolidate into one position.
Yeah, that's the local level. I correspond with the state to get their approval at the state level as well. He has been instrumental in our immunization appointment base, trying to pursue those that are not following up with people making their in for their next particular one. And she serves another role or two with us, so I noticed we were starting to run out of money, and she was putting in 6-7 hours a week. So I have that available. That's time.
Rodney's grant funding from the state obviously operates on a state fiscal year that ends in June. So as we approach the end of that state fiscal year, we start moving money around, much like other departments do in November and December. You'll see the next one is in the health department. There's $2,000 and $600 that we're moving to an equipment line, again, to try to consolidate and utilize, to squeeze every last bit that we can out of some of those state grants.
And I'd like to address that as well, because we are moving that money to buy a lead care laser that will now allow us to start offering lead testing when the children come in to get their vaccination. We're buckling those two particular services
great.
together. We're able to allow me to give that immunization nurse a full-time position. So I'm showing you as well that one of the things we're going to have to start doing is testing those children when they come in to get those vaccines. We're going to be able to get some lead results, because that's a big issue.
Sorry.
If you remember back in July, that lead levels were lower. State level to be working out. So we're preparing to basically meet those new core services that money coming down the pipe.
Okay, thank you for that background there. So that concludes the list of the transfers that require council approval. I'd entertain a motion to approve that slate.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clark. Second by Mike. I think I had Mike's hand first. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0. Okay, as we normally do, I'd like to have a motion that we've received and reviewed the financial and budget status statements. This is sort of our monthly update of where we are in the budget and what our fund balances are as we begin the month of May.
I'll make a motion that has been received and reviewed.
Okay, motion by Jeff, second by Carol. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0. Any council reports? Meetings that anyone may have attended representing the council? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, I'll move to commissioner reports. Anything, Commissioner Weaver, that you'd like to share or report?
Actually, on behalf of the commissioners, Alan, we'd like to thank you and the council for all the additional work and meetings that have taken place with the various bond issues and the rebuilding of the courthouse, and obviously the annexation is over and above and beyond what normal people realize. And kudos to all of you for rolling up your sleeves and doing the various things that are necessary to get the work done. We appreciate the good way that you've done it. So,
I appreciate
kudos
that.
to you.
As the old saying goes, Commissioner Weaver, flattery will get you everywhere. So,
Did I get a raise? But thank you, guys, seriously.
all right, thank you. Any department heads need time with the council? I see we have several in the room. Stephen?
Good morning.
Good morning.
First, thank you for passing the bond ordinance to allow us to continue functioning as we do. I just want to put this out. This is 2 years ahead of time, but for ambulances, we're backed up 2 to 3 years in terms of ordering. And so we put our name on 2 ambulances, but now Osage is saying, hey, we would like those contracts signed establishing your position with us. So I've got 2. One is for 2025, 2026. It's either going to be the last quarter of 25 or first quarter of 26 when that would arrive. And it's for $274,971. And then the other ambulance would be the first or second quarter of 2025 at $269,655. So I just wanted to touch base with you guys before we move forward with that.
Do we have to determine now the method of financing? Because
No.
typically we've done those in a lease.
Right.
We should be having a lease expire. And
Yes.
it would be the plan to roll into that next lease for 2 more. So, I mean, in a way, that works perfectly.
It does. Yeah, so the way we've previously done it is
We're just, what you're asking us for is to commit to the order.
Yes.
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
The way that's previously been financed is through that lease, and we initially had our names on an ambulance in 2024, and I ended up withdrawing that and moving it a year because what we were going to end up having is it was going to overflow
Yeah.
on that lease. So we've since pushed it back so that the lease would just continuously roll. So kind of an expected financial cost per year out of our budget.
Correct. Just want to be clear on that. That we're not we're not burdening the budget, we're just kind of refilling that lease payment bucket.
Yep.
So with that request being made, I would entertain a motion that the council's desire to support the moving forward with the purchase and getting on the list for that next set of new ambulances.
I'm sorry, Stephen, do you know if what would happen if it was pushed back? If the agreement is signed to say, hey, we're just trying to put ourselves in line here,
Yeah.
would they just find somebody else to take that ambulance, or is there a penalty involved at all or anything? Or
So when we just have our name on it, it's pretty loose, and we can just say, "Hey, actually cancel that,"
Very good.
and they'll find somebody to put in that place because demand's pretty high, right? But once we sign this,
It's ours.
it is ours. Yeah, their expectation is that we are going to follow through with the purchase.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And Alan, you're saying this would be a normal time frame.
Correct. This would be in the right spot in the cycle for the current lease to expire. We roll into the new one. It'll be no doubt a higher figure with the cost of the ambulance being more expensive than the previous batch, but there already is a slot in the budget for this.
Correct. And with the 3-year lease that we've been doing, with 2 new ambulances coming through, like right now, our ambulance lease line's right at $160,000. So, would expect that value to carry on moving forward.
So the cycle we've gotten on is we have the 2 new ones that are kind of the heavy-duty frontline ones. The next 2 go to become the ambulances 3 and 4, and then when 3 and 4 cycle out, they go out to the townships. That's how we've been kind of working the cycle.
So the idea is that for the future, this is a 3-year continual cycle, and
Right.
we are never short.
So,
I'll make that motion.
okay. I have Carol's motion of support to move forward with the
Second.
purchase of the new ambulances, seconded by Jeff. Any last questions, comments, clarifications? That's a big number. I don't
It's a big
want to
It's a big.
shortchange the discussion, but it is part of the, kind of the normal plan. All right, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Any other department heads? Seriously? Oh, I was gonna be shocked.
Just Sheriff Kelly here at the Sheriff's Office. A few things to cover. And the commissioners will get this on the 15th at their next meeting as well. We've had a couple electrical fires similar to the one we had a few months back, and we had air handlers that motors went bad, causing some issues electrically, and we had to have Congleton come in. Congleton Electric came in on basically an emergency process to get things back and running, to track down where the fire started. And what it did was it burned up all the wiring and the conduit that's located in probably the worst place ever, in the concrete, in the basement, under the floor. So we had to reroute that electric temporarily to get those air handlers moving, because we can't function the facility without proper air movement inside. So that's where we were at. It's still on a temporary fix right now. I talked to Commissioner President Brewer, and he would request, wanted 3 bids, and that to get the permanent fix taken care of, and that would be placing new conduit and reroute it where it's temporarily set now. So that's something that we're in the process of getting those bids. One company has not returned any phone calls and hasn't showed up to do the bid. We have at least 2 other bids that we can show the commissioners in the next week, and it's probably going to be in the area of $5,000, a little more, to make that permanent fix for those air handlers. And a couple motors have been burned up, so that's a couple $1,000s, not including the time to put it in. I think our maintenance guys put the motors in, but the purchases for that, so it's all going to be in the maintenance process. So with that, I don't have to tell you again, we're in a 30-year-old building that is going to, give us some tricks every once in a while. And, my concern is that, and as well with dispatch, is that if we have another electrical issue, it could be pretty devastating to, the facility as far as operations, but also to our 911. So we have to be conscious of that, and that's something that, hopefully in the future we can look to rectifying that building. So I'll leave that there. Some really great things that are going on. We are in the process, and this is a process through the federal inmate program that we have that is extremely intensive, and we're up to renegotiate the agreement as far as that goes. But in that process, we also have to be vetted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We have to go through the U.S. Marshals. So for those that don't understand what the matron does at the facility for Ashley Kelly, I wouldn't want to do it. It's worse than writing 2 or 3 grants at the same time, and it's going to take, probably several months to get through the process, and then we have to go through the agreement process, and costs have went up on everything, as we could see, from vehicles to salaries and everything else. So it's something that she has taken on and that program, and will continue to work in that program and create that process for us. So here in the next few months, we're going to end up with that process of having to do all of that. So we're talking about, several weeks, if not a few months, before we get a finalization of all that and have an understanding of what 2024 is going to bring for us and the next year. So it's something that, we knew it was coming. It's just going to be, everybody dreads the paperwork, and that strictly falls on Ashley's shoulders and my shoulders to get that done. And it's something that, we reap the benefits from that program. We also have the VEST grant to reimburse for body armor, things like that, for the jail staff, special deputies, and also our merit deputies. We're in that process as well. And it is one of those things that, we'll continue to work and strive to, get compensated for those, recompensated for the money, or at least 50% for the vests. So that's something that, we definitely want to happen. We also have the new department members for the merit deputies. We're in that process. We have 4 people left out of the process for the 4 positions that were paid for by the federal inmate program, and extremely excited about getting those folks hired in the next probably couple weeks. And obviously the issues are everybody wants everything at one time, and we are going to be 4 to 6 weeks out on at least 2 psychological evaluations before we can get those scheduled for those 2 deputies. We do have 2 lateral officers that are coming in that will probably be out on the road and in uniform before we get the last 2 hired. So it'll be probably over a month before we can put everybody out there. So, but fantastic, and that's funded with the Federal Inmate Fund and looks great. Looking forward to that. Also on the SRO portion, kind of waiting on the addendum that the commissioners we talked about, they would do for that money received by the schools to be able to do that part. And I guess on the 15th we'll have more conversation about that, but hopefully that'll work through. And also the replacement of those officers kind of solely relies on what the commissioners, think and what they're going to do with that addendum and things like that. So.
My understanding is that addendum's with the attorneys at this point.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, and we know that's going to be, I don't know.
Attorneys do what attorneys do.
Yes, and sometimes it's like I say, we want it today, not in 2 or 3 weeks. But hopefully that process gets taken care of. So, and here at the end of the school year, that's something I think is really important that, we kind of look at, and, the benefits for our community, as well as the ability possibly in the future of hiring those 2 replacements, and hopefully that'll work out, and we'll be able to do that. Vehicle-wise, I'm going to tell Stephen that he needs to get on the list, because I've been on the list now. We were supposed to take delivery of the last of the Tahoes this past April, and that didn't happen, and we were pushed all the way to August, maybe September, before we'll see those last vehicles. So we're kind of in that process of getting it done, but and I'm looking at, we're going to be almost a year behind in model before we even take delivery of the 23s. So I mean, it's kind of one of those things where I hate to be the pessimist, but I would say that we probably won't see those till after the new year. So definitely, for the ambulance services, they're going to have to be on the list, and commit to that because we're sitting and waiting on vehicles. And the good thing is we have vehicles and we have good vehicles that we can use as pool vehicles or, in the temporary portion. So that's something that we definitely have to do. I do have one request today, though. I'm not going to let you guys off scot-free. I need to replace some mulch. I need to replace flowers. I need to replace some plants that died over the winter. So I'd love to be able to use some commissary funds to make that happen. And I don't know an exact amount, but I think $1,000 would be there, and the fund is doing very well. So I would appreciate the ability to do that and beautify the facility.
Do I have a motion to approve the use for some landscaping uses of commissary funds not to exceed $1,000?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Jeff, second by Mike. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, for the changes that we had there at the facility, we do our own mowing now. We didn't bid out anything, and basically what it came down to was we have the ability, we have the people that volunteer and go out and help us, the inmates that go out and get some sunshine, do some work, and so we went to, and some people will be happy about this, we went to a kind of a totally green ability. We bought reel mowers, the old school reel mowers, and so we do the mowing and that with the volunteer inmates, and and we also purchased that through the commissary fund to make sure that and it's something that we don't have to tune it up, we don't have to add gas to it. We did buy a couple electric weed trimmers, but so far so good. Everything looks great. Also working with the fair board to make sure that they get their places mowed, and we have a volunteer from work release that goes out 2 days a week and mows the property. I know they made a big commitment and bought some equipment, and so we're there to help out the fair board as much as we can, and so far it's been looking really good, and we get those folks out there. I don't know if they're mowing yours as well, Stephen, so you guys are on a bid process as well? So let's pinch back that bond money. We might be able to just mow your, quarter acre lot there as well. But it's something to think about for next year. But, it's something that, we do have volunteers that come from inside and get out there and get that done. And most of it's been through the work release folks. And, and honestly, they go to work and they come back and they sit. And they would rather be out doing something rather than just sitting in the facility. And so it works out with that process. So I'd like to thank our jail staff for making that happen. And, so it's something that, so far so good on keeping the properties looking decent, looking good. So anybody have any questions?
I have a question for the sheriff. This, and everybody on the council may know this, but I just educate myself. So the federal inmate contract, who signs that? Who sees that? What's the process for that?
It's the agreement through the sheriff, the sheriff, and the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and I take care of that through working with the Federal Bureau of Prisons to make that happen. The U.S. Marshals, basically, and we do that agreement, and we negotiate the price of what we're going to receive as far as the agreement. And that agreement is, I think it's at $68 right now, and a comparison to that is the state inmates that we hold is $37.50.
That's dollars per inmate per day.
Dollars per inmate per day. So, and we average probably 30 to 50 of the federal inmates, and the state, we hold probably 10, maybe 15 on average from the state of Indiana. So that's the process, and holding the inmates and that decision process is mine. And it's something that, we talked about as early as 2019 because of what we saw in the future financially and things like that, and the processes that we had to have. So it's something that, we have a 223, I think we're a 223 bed facility, and we stay right at 190 to 200 on average. And most of the time less than
I
that.
just wanted to understand the process.
Yeah,
Thank
and but we'll go into negotiations with them because we did have an increase in pay for our employees and for our jail staff across the board through the county. So that's something to want to take into consideration when we go to the Bureau of Prisons and the U.S. Marshals and renegotiate that contract for the next 2 years.
Thank you for the information.
And feel free to stop by anytime. And I'm going to direct you right to Ashley.
Okay.
And, and she can sit down with you and talk to you about it and let you look at it and see everything.
Great. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sheriff, one question I have, if we get those 4 officers hired here in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Are we fully staffed at that point? Is that the
Yes.
last 4 or the?
Yep,
okay.
that's the last 4. And that's like the SRO positions. That would be wonderful if we could,
Right.
fulfill those as well. And that's kind of, where we're at. And, looking at the different things in the community is kind of the way I gauge everything, is that here we are with, upgrades to water, sewage, and things like that going out to, I-65. We're talking about, businesses and different things going out there. And I realize there's an annexation process, but I think that's a positive effect for the rest of the county, that we're going to have housing. We're going to, there's a lot of things going on over the next 4 to 5 years that, is the process of, we need more deputies. We have to be able to show public safety. We have to be able to show the different things that the county can offer to these communities and to the housing, that is needed here to bring more residents. So I'm going to try and stay positive, and and just like anything, I listen to Shan Sheridan, I listen to a lot of people, and I watch what's going on, and I see the growth of the county. So hopefully, in the next 4 to 5 years, that's exactly what we're going to see, is that growth. So, planning for the future, that's something that I think, is inevitably what we're going to have is more police coverage. And as far as being full staffed, I'm not sure, and I'd love to not be able to keep up, and that just means that we're growing. So,
Okay, anything else? Any questions for the sheriff?
When does the current contract expire? Is it a calendar year and
it's July,
December?
no,
August?
August 1st. It's a lot different, and and the federal budget's a July to July, but August 1st is the end of that agreement. And I'll let Ashley speak towards the agreement, and that way you guys will, if you have any more questions than that.
Let me clarify real quick. It's not that it's expiring, it's that every 36 months is up for renegotiation of the dollar amounts of the per diem per inmates, and then our transportation costs and our medical transportation reimbursement. So it's not that it's expiring, it's that I have the opportunity to go in and reevaluate our numbers.
So it's ongoing.
Yes, yeah.
All right.
Renegotiation. All right, thank you.
And then, and I think it's important this year, especially with the 10% raise, things like that, that the county was gracious enough to give to the employees, but also the other costs that are
Meal
involved.
costs, yeah.
Fuel,
Everything.
maintenance, everything has went up, and I wish I, could say that we're going to plateau, but I don't think we're going to plateau anytime soon. So with that, the renegotiation is something that'll work in our benefit, hopefully at the sheriff's office and for the county, and that we'll be able to, take care of those extensions, like the vehicles and salaries, things like that.
Have you had an instance with a federal inmate where your costs were so much, over because of medical for them or something, it's a specific situation?
I'll let Ashley answer it, but no.
So the medical's a little bit different. For our DOC inmates, we have the reimbursements for medical where the county will actually pay out, and then we will put into the Department of Corrections for the reimbursement. On the federal inmate, it is completely opposite. They are paid directly from the federal government. So we don't see the medical bills. They get sent directly to the U.S. Marshals.
There's no medical expenses are astronomical and they could do you in fast.
So because our medical contract was written in such a way that an inmate is an inmate, it doesn't matter their classification. So they take care of our federal inmates just as they would our county.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you both.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think Rodney needed time.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to bring in one of my 2 new employees. I'm still having trouble wrangling the other. He's in a training over at Purdue today. This is Nash Smith. Nash is a deeply rooted Clinton County resident. He had applied amongst 9 other individuals for the environmental health position, which you folks helped make possible to separate those 2 jobs out. And he is now, we interviewed 3, and he was our top choice, and he has been on about a week or so now, almost second week. So I'm going to let him just talk a little bit and entertain any questions you may have as well.
Okay.
Well, hello. Hello. I mean, sorry if I look underdressed. This is best you're gonna get with me today. But I assure you, with not just being born and raised here in Clinton County, I can't say I am beyond excited, not just to be getting to know each and every one of you, but to be representing this county and just continuing to live, learn, and grow with this county in any way possible. And might I say, this county is more than just a home to me. This county is my livelihood, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Just serve and continue to be a huge contribution any way possible.
Thank you, Nash.
Wow.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Are you still helping United Way as well?
Well, now that you mention that, it did go about a month, but right now I'm just a volunteer if it's needed and all of those.
Okay, thank you for your help.
And might I say, just getting to see each and every one of you here under this roof for the, well, actually this is the first time to see these fine faces, and I'm looking forward to working with each and every one of you, and just getting the opportunity to live, learn, and grow is truly an honor.
It's nice to see a local person want to serve their community.
You stay close to Rodney, he'll teach you everything you need to know.
Absolutely.
I did also want to follow up with you folks too. Yeah, Nash is on board and training. We've had Mr. Hong with us for 4 weeks, almost 5 now. He's into his second training already. So he will get a chance to come and address you as well. I know he's talked to the commissioners. I did want to I got a housekeeping note that I don't know when we talked about the approval and the change of all that, whether I gave you folks copies of this. If I did, my apologies for a second one. It also has the latest information that had come in over that additional funding for the COVID vaccines. But to address you folks just real quick, obviously Senate Bill 4 and the House Bill 1001 did pass with some modifications. I'm awaiting with the State Department of Health to get an actual figure for what our county figure will be. I have a rough estimation in my mind that it's going to be probably in excess of 600,000 this first year. So obviously my challenge is going to be to work with you folks and the commissioners to best strategically utilize that money, and knowing that there's a good chance it might be almost twice as much the second year. I can't stress how much from the the composition of our current budget being almost 80% salaries and benefits, that a lot of what's going to happen is growth within our department. That is a blessing and sometimes a challenge as well. So I'm going to have to be looking at additional space that I'm working with Laura at Healthy Communities. We're throwing some ideas around, but I know I'm going to have to count on the commissioners and the council for their guidance and perhaps some historical changes that we do in the way we do things here for public health in the near future. So
Thank you for this. It's
Sure.
very helpful.
sure, I'm sorry. I think you all did the approvals of it all, but I wanted to, I failed to hand it out the day that you guys did that, so I want you to have that in record.
And there's a call later this morning, in fact, with the State Department of Health that's
The
was
team
noticed,
meeting.
was the team's meeting,
Mhm.
noticed to council and commissioner members across the state. And I think Jeff's gonna hop on that to represent our council on that meeting. My goal is to, once we have a comfort level with what our expectations are at the county level, I don't want to use the word if, when we opt into that funding, that we'll go back, and I think we're going to have to do a mid-year course adjustment on your overall budget and make whatever changes we need to do to fit the requirements that are asked of us.
So, yeah, and so, again, be aware, first of all, we had our team meeting for the local health departments, administrators, and boards last week.
Okay.
Had at least 3 of us that were in attendance to that.
Okay.
There may have been more, but there was over 300 people on the call, so scrolling through. It is recorded,
Okay.
so each and every one of you can re-access that and listen to it at a later time. I know Jordan was concerned he wouldn't be able to with his busy farm schedule, but I assured him it's there available. It's pertinent that you hear the same things we do, because I'm not changing what I'm doing as far as working partnership with the local government in doing this. This is like I say, I've waited 20 years in hopes that we would see something like this happen. And now at this point, I'm going to use every effort I can to strategically plan that out for the next several years, how the government and health department can work to make every dollar of that money count towards our local residents, so.
I just want to make sure I don't want to tackle this piecemeal.
Sure.
One at a time. I'd rather us
Certainly.
have our discussion, come up with our comprehensive plan and present it all at once. is my thinking.
Completely understood, and to that effect, I'm currently wanting to work with my board to have a retreat. I have two of my manager individuals in the department working on looking at job situations where we would expand what services that those individuals would be looking at taking over. And then, of course, ensuing job descriptions that will have to be developed for those as well. And then we're going to present that to our board for prioritization through year one and most likely year two. But the last thing, as I've continued to say, was that when they give us this money, that I don't want to stand there and say, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it, because I don't think that's the right answer. So after waiting this long, I definitely want to have a strategic plan for all of you, so.
Very good.
But thank you.
Lots of opportunities.
Yes, historical ones. So again, thank you so much for your time. And again, Nash and I are appreciative of your chance to get a chance to meet you.
All right. Thank you both.
Thanks.
Any other department heads? I've got a couple more in the room.
I wasn't going to, but real quick, I do share some concerns that the sheriff has as well. It just makes me nervous. I mean, with the building and issues we've had, I mean, you never know. You could be in a new building and have issues, but it does very much make me nervous. I mean, the night of the tornado, no fault necessarily of the building itself, but like the power kept going in and out, so the generator wouldn't kick on. It caused our fire alarm to go off, and the jail is able to silence it and take care of it, but it continued down in dispatch for probably 30 minutes before
Oh, my.
Terry could get there. So, I mean, that was stressful. You know, it's loud. We're taking all of these calls, and that just adds, you know, I mean,
Crazy.
we have, there's issues. So I do want to say that I share those concerns as well. So other than that, I think I've told you before, I just mentioned it last year during the budget hearing, you know, I'm going to have to look at adding staffing as well, if we could ever get to full staff. But we're getting busier. We're getting busier, everybody's adding. I think the days of our working minimum of 3, 4 on a shift are coming to an end, and it needs to be probably 4 on a shift minimum. So I'm going to be having to look at some of those things going into budget hearings. So just, again, I know I talked about it last year, but just kind of wanted to bring that up. And, I mean, we're going to have to
We need to have
do
at
some
least,
serious,
we need to have at least one, we need to start conversing with our friends at the city.
Yes,
Because we
correct.
do share that cost and make sure they're aware of the same growth and, yeah,
just wanted to bring that up.
yeah, appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Renee.
Rick, Liz, anything from either of you? Okay, very good. I don't believe we have anybody else. Anybody have any other business to come before the council? Seeing and hearing none, call the meeting adjourned.
Great question. Because that opens the same doors. Because, yeah, that's right.
I can innocently ask this.
Oh, that's all right, beautiful. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Have
Have a good day. No, that's right.
Good luck.
Exactly. Yeah, usually, because I was supposed